And what paralyzes you isn't the fear of failure, but the fear of becoming everything you're capable of being? Think about it. How many times have you sabotaged yourself just when everything was starting to work out? This question is uncomfortable because it reveals something you already feel, but avoid admitting. The idea of growth is frightening because it demands responsibility. Deep down, you know you're capable of much more, but you fear the price it would demand. And perhaps this fear isn't a flaw, but an ancient mechanism of the mind, trying to keep you safe. Two thinkers saw this inner struggle with rare clarity. Carl Gustav Jung, a Swiss psychiatrist, dedicated his life to understanding the invisible forces that drive human behavior. Friedrich Nietzsche, a German philosopher, provoked the world with ideas that challenged everything that seemed stable. Both saw growth as a painful yet inevitable process and believed that freedom only arises when an individual confronts what they most fear within themselves. Jung observed that self-sabotage is not a conscious act, but a defense of the unconscious. Inside every person exists a repressed force, the potential that has not yet been lived. This side, which he called the golden shadow, represents everything you could become, but still fear to reveal. Nietzsche, in turn, saw this same conflict as the dilemma of modern man. Everyone wants to win, but few can bear the weight of becoming victorious. This creates a mixture of curiosity and discomfort. You feel there's something within you that could shine, yet you don't understand why you freeze when the opportunity appears. You call it laziness, procrastination, discouragement, lack of focus, sometimes even depression. But what truly exists behind it is fear, the fear of leaving familiar territory. The mind clings to what is predictable, even if it hurts, because the new always threatens the safety of the familiar. This fear isn't weakness, it's instinct. It disguises itself as prudence, humility, rationality. But what truly exists is an internal conflict. One part wants to expand, the other wants to stay protected. Jung understood this clash as the unconscious's natural resistance to change. Nietzsche saw in it the root of human mediocrity, the impulse to remain small, to avoid feeling exposed. And it is from this inner battle that the fear of shining is born. Have you ever noticed that every time you decide to change, something inside you starts sabotaging the process? Suddenly, a distraction appears, a doubt, a desire to postpone. It's as if an invisible force, I would rather see you stand still than risk transformation. Jung believed this isn't laziness, but a self-protection mechanism of the unconscious. It acts as a guardian of what you already know, even if that familiar is what limits you the most. Why do I always sabotage myself when I'm about to change? This question is born from the conflict between desire and fear. You want to move forward, but part of you fears what might happen if you succeed. Nietzsche observed that human beings fear freedom more than imprisonment, because freedom forces them to be responsible for every choice. That's why sometimes you don't fail from lack of strength, but from fear of losing the safety that failure provides. Self-sabotage is how the unconscious tries to keep you in familiar territory. It remembers the times you tried something new and were criticized, rejected, or ridiculed. To avoid reliving those memories, the unconscious convinces you to stop before trying again. Thus, it turns fear into logic and creates excuses that sound rational. It's not the right time yet. I lack motivation. I need to be better prepared. But all of this is just fear disguised as prudence. Why do I start everything with excitement but never finish? Because excitement comes from the soul. But resistance is born in the mind. When enthusiasm appears, it represents life trying to move you. But soon the unconscious triggers, the memory of what could go wrong, and fear takes over again. Jung said that what you don't face controls you. And that's exactly what happens. The shadow creates the fear of change and calls it fatigue. The light that drives you is the same one the mind tries to dim. If what we've said so far makes you think about how many times you stopped halfway, don't leave this video. By the end, you'll understand why this happens and discover something no one ever told you about your own strength. Because the problem was never a lack of discipline. It was the absence of understanding about what holds you back. And when you understand the origin of this fear, what once seemed like a blockage turns into clarity, and the shadow that once held you back begins to become an ally of your growth. Have you ever wondered why you always seem tired of trying? Why does effort never translate into results? The answer may not lie in discipline, but in something much deeper. Jung saw this exhaustion as the result of an internal struggle, the conscious self trying to move forward while the unconscious resists. To keep everything as it is, it's not a lack of strength. It's the fatigue of fighting against parts of yourself that still don't trust the new. Is the problem a lack of discipline or something emotional? Most of the time, it's emotional. Discipline fails when desire is not aligned with what you feel. Nietzsche observed that human beings act with persistence only when they find meaning in what they do. The body obeys, but the soul needs direction. When what you pursue doesn't align with what you believe, effort becomes a burden, and fatigue becomes a signal that something needs to be reconsidered. Why am I afraid of being seen, praised, or recognized? Because being seen means being exposed, and being exposed means risking judgment. The unconscious associates recognition with danger, because at some point in life, being noticed may have caused rejection. Jung saw this as a scar, left from childhood, the fear of disappointing those who admired you. So, the adult learns to hide, not out of humility, but out of self-protection. They fear being recognized, and with that, losing the love that once made them feel safe. Why does other people's success bother me? Because others' success reflects what hasn't yet been lived within you. When someone achieves what you desire, the unconscious interprets it as a reminder of your own blockage. Nietzsche stated that envy is a form of repressed admiration. The problem isn't seeing someone else shine. It's not knowing how to deal with your own desire to do the same. The mind reacts by projecting frustration, when in fact what it feels is the call to act. This cycle creates what Jung called soul fatigue, the exhaustion of holding yourself back. You try to evolve, but part of you pulls you back, and the more force you apply, the more resistance you encounter. That's why effort turns into exhaustion. What's missing isn't discipline, it's integration. Because when you understand what you feel, effort stops being a battle and becomes a natural movement. Every transformation comes at a price, and that's why, even when you want to change, you hesitate. The mind whispers questions that seem simple, but carry fear and memory. If I change, will I still be loved? It's a doubt, born from affection. Jung saw this dilemma as one of the deepest in the unconscious, the invisible loyalty to the people who shaped us. You want to grow, but you fear that your growth will break bonds. And out of love, you prefer not to evolve too much. Often, the fear of change doesn't come from insecurity, but from guilt. The guilt of imagining that by becoming a new version of yourself, you might leave someone behind. It's the feeling that your happiness might hurt those who haven't yet managed to free themselves. Nietzsche saw this as the disease of misunderstood compassion. When love prevents expansion, you remain trapped in old roles, believing that being loyal to others is nobler than being loyal to yourself. What if I stand out and lose those who accept me as I am today? This question reveals the root of the fear of shining. From an early age, you learned that being too much scares people, that having a voice bothers them, that success provokes envy. The unconscious records all of this and begins to associate visibility with risk. So every time an opportunity to stand out arises, something inside you retreats. And this retreat is interpreted as shyness or humility, when in fact, it's fear of rejection disguised as modesty. Jung explained that this fear originates in childhood, when love came with conditions. You were accepted as long as you met expectations, but you didn't know if you'd still be loved when you defied them. That's why the adult learns to control their own light, so as not to threaten emotional bonds. It's an old reflex. If I'm too much, I might lose the love that keeps me safe. And so, the soul creates an invisible limit to avoid reliving the pain of abandonment. The paradox is that the more you try to fit in, the more you feel like you're disappearing. The price of being accepted, at the cost of yourself, is the emptying of the soul. Nietzsche said that what imprisons man the most is the desire to be loved by everyone. And he was right. The fear of being who you are is born from the attempt to keep the love of those who may have never truly seen you. Only when you risk losing that love do you discover what it really means to find yourself. Every change demands losing something, and that's the point where many give up. Transformation doesn't ask only for effort, but for letting go. Do I really deserve a better life? This question may seem naive, but it carries enormous weight. The unconscious, accustomed to protecting itself from pain, associates happiness with danger. Jung saw this feeling as a kind of emotional self-penance, when the mind believes it's not worthy of peace because it's grown used to struggle. And so, when life improves, you find relief strange. The fear of deserving comes from guilt. Guilt for having more than others, for being more confident, for shining in an environment that learned to value suffering. Nietzsche observed, that man was taught to admire sacrifice and distrust joy. That's why, when the chance to prosper appears, you retreat, not from laziness, but from loyalty to pain. Deep down, there's fear of being misunderstood, of being judged as selfish, for seeking a life that truly makes sense. Who will I be if I stop being who I've always been? This question reveals the terror of changing identity. The mind gets used to its own labels: the responsible one, the quiet one, the one who doesn't disturb. And when you try to break through that structure, everything inside you goes on alert. Jung called this the crisis of individuation, the moment when the old version must die so that the new one can be born. The problem is that the ego clings to what it knows, even if it prevents it from living something greater. Is the pain of transformation worth the price of leaving comfort behind? It is, but no one said it would be easy. Nietzsche provoked, growth is an open wound that teaches. And it's true. Growth hurts because it demands renunciation. It requires letting go of what no longer serves you, even if it once saved you. Discomfort is the sign that you're moving in the right direction, because only those who have the courage to feel discomfort have the chance to truly reinvent themselves. The price of expansion is high, but the cost of staying the same is even higher. Every time you postpone your own change, you pay with a bit of your life, your time, your authenticity, your voice. Jung said that what we deny dominates us, and what we accept transforms us. In the end, the suffering you fear is the very thing that will set you free. You clicked on this video for a reason you might not even realize. Deep down, it wasn't just curiosity, it was a silent plea for relief. Jung believed that every search for self-knowledge is born from the pain of not understanding oneself. When you feel stuck, the mind looks for rational explanations, but the heart just wants rest. The click comes from the hope of understanding what's wrong and somehow beginning to free yourself from the guilt of not living your best. The thought, "I'm not weak, I just don't understand what's blocking me," is what drives those who arrive here. That's the spark of consciousness, trying to breathe. Nietzsche saw this as the first sign of strength, the moment when a person decides to stop blaming themselves and starts to investigate. The click represents that moment, the beginning of an intimate conversation with your own soul. You no longer want to feel small, you just want to understand. What inside you still resists growing. The desire for transformation is what keeps you watching. It's the impulse of someone who's grown tired of repeating the same patterns, but doesn't yet know how to break them. Jung called this creative tension, the conflict between what the soul asks for and what the mind fears. It's that tension that holds you back and at the same time pushes you forward. The click is the reflection of a request for change, not to become someone else, but to finally stop fighting who you already are. Many click searching for an answer, but find an emotional mirror. What hurts the most isn't failure. It's not understanding why it repeats itself. Nietzsche believed that man suffers not from what he lives, but from not knowing the meaning of what he lives. When suffering is given a name, it turns into wisdom. And that's what you seek here, an explanation that restores power, that turns pain into something that can finally be used to grow. You didn't click on this video by chance. You clicked because something within you has already begun to awaken. What brought you here was the intuition that there's a path beyond self-sabotage, and it exists. By the end of this video, you'll understand that fear no longer needs to be an obstacle. It can become a guide, because when consciousness illuminates what the mind was hiding, guilt dissolves, and what once was a burden begins to turn into direction. There comes a moment when the search stops being curiosity and becomes urgency. You start to feel that understanding is no longer enough, and you want to change. Jung said that true awakening happens when knowledge meets courage. It's when the mind stops asking for answers and starts asking for direction. This is the point where many arrive exhausted. They've read, tried, reflected, yet still don't feel free. This is where the process truly begins. You want clarity. You want to understand why you know what you need to do, but still don't do it. Nietzsche observed that modern man suffers from lucidity without action. He understands too much and acts too little. Clarity has become a burden when it should have been an impulse. What's missing isn't strength, it's reconciliation with it. It's realizing that fear and courage are not opposites, but parts of the same movement. The soul matures when it stops choosing one and learns to use both. The search now is no longer for external answers, but for inner mastery. Not that rigid control that suffocates, but the serenity of someone who understands their own rhythm. Jung believed that self-mastery means learning to listen to yourself, to hear the parts that still scream inside, and give them a new place. That's what you want. Peace with your own strength. You want to stop doubting your own intentions. You want to feel that you can act without having to justify yourself. The real desire is to reconcile with everything that's been denied, with the anger that turned into guilt, the fear that turned into caution, the will that turned into exhaustion. Nietzsche called this amor fati, the love of one's own fate. Acceptance is not resignation. It's integration. It's understanding that nothing in you is a mistake, only a part that hasn't yet been put in the right place. And when that happens, something shifts. Conflict turns into momentum, and the weight begins to move. Perhaps that's why you're still here, because something in you recognizes that it's time to allow yourself to live fully. What once was effort now wants to be light. What once was pain begins to turn into meaning. Jung said that healing happens when the conscious and the unconscious shake hands. And if you've stayed until now, it's because you're ready for more. So, in the next few minutes, I'll show you how to apply all of this in practice, the real path to freeing yourself from what holds you back and beginning to live truthfully. You've made it this far, and that already says a lot. Self-sabotage isn't about weakness. It's about abandonment. You learn to be punctual for others, but are always late for yourself. You promise to start, but get distracted. You dream big, but execute halfway. It's a subtle way of giving up without admitting it. The first step toward freedom is making a real commitment to what you can become. Not a pact with perfection, but with consistency. Choose something small and do it until the end, without negotiating with yourself. Tomorrow morning, the first thing you should do is remember who you want to become. Write a short phrase on a piece of paper and put it somewhere visible. Today I will not abandon myself. That's more powerful than any technique. The mind needs repetition to believe. And when you fulfill a small act of discipline, self-sabotage loses its fuel. Getting up, when your body wants to stay in bed, is more than a physical act. It's a way of telling yourself, I matter. Create a ritual of emotional responsibility. Set aside 10 minutes a day to review what you promised yourself. Ask, what did I fail to do for myself today? And why did I betray myself again? Not to blame yourself, but to understand the pattern. Self-sabotage dissolves when it's observed without drama. When you become honest about your own neglect, it loses power. Self-care is the opposite of escape. It's the habit of putting yourself back on your path every single day. If you notice, you're constantly overloading yourself. Learn to pause with purpose. It's not procrastination. It's strategy. Use pauses to breathe, walk, get some sunlight, or read something outside your routine. That clears the mental noise and restores energy to what truly matters. Being productive isn't about doing more. It's about doing what brings you closer to who you want to be. And if even then you feel like giving up, stop, but don't go back. Breathe and resume when you can. But don't abandon yourself again. Another way to break the cycle is to step out of your own center. Self-sabotage feeds on isolation. Step outside yourself. Go see the world. If you can, adopt a stray animal and care for it. If not, help a shelter. Donate time, affection, love, and food. Go to a hospital, nursing home, or orphanage. Talk, listen, hug, cry. When you engage with real suffering, you realize you were trapped inside an imaginary cell. Empathy restores proportion to pain and puts the ego back in its place. Then, practice the exercise of active presence. Choose a simple task: tidying your room, washing dishes, organizing papers, and do it with full attention. Without haste, without distraction. The habit of finishing what you start re-educates the brain to trust you. Self-sabotage is born from the repetition of abandonment. Each time you complete something, no matter how small, you send a message to your mind. This time, I kept my word. That's how self-respect is rebuilt. Every night, write down 3 things you did for yourself during the day, including the small ones. That's more than a journal. It's proof of presence. It's easy to remember what's missing, but hard to acknowledge what's been done. And when you start recognizing yourself, the pattern of self-sabotage dissolves. The brain learns to associate progress with satisfaction, not with pressure, and so the cycle changes. What was once obligation becomes pride. And if one day doubt returns, and it will, remember this: it's not about never failing, it's about never abandoning yourself. Self-sabotage doesn't disappear with strength, but with consistency. It weakens every time you honor what you promised. The secret is simple: keep small promises until your mind understands it can trust you. And when that happens, the fear of growing will give way to something new: the pleasure of sustaining your own greatness. In the end, liberation isn't about defeating fear. It's about stopping the betrayal of yourself. It's looking at your own potential without running away. Self-sabotage is the subtlest way of giving up your own greatness, and the world already has too many people giving up. So, if you have to choose a side, choose yours. And that's not selfishness. It's self-respect. Choose yourself, even when tired, even in doubt, even when no one's watching. Because every time you choose yourself, something within you realigns, and what once seemed impossible begins to take shape. Perhaps the transformation you seek isn't about changing everything, but about keeping the promises you made to yourself. Self-respect is the soil of freedom. It's what sustains consistency, even when motivation fades. And it is consistency that transforms dreams into concrete facts. In the end, it's not the size of your talent that defines your destiny. It's how faithful you remain to what you started. So before you leave, do one thing. Close your eyes for a few seconds and imagine yourself fulfilling what you've always postponed, seeing the result, feeling the relief. That's not fantasy. It's a preview of what awaits you if you stop sabotaging yourself. Leave a comment below and share what you felt. And if this video awakens something in you, like it, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who's also been betraying themselves without realizing it. It might be the turning point that both that person and you have been needing. And if you want to continue this journey, there are materials in the comments that dive deeper: guides, reflections, and practices to help you understand yourself better. But above all, remember, you don't need a new beginning, just a new decision, and it can start right now, in the moment. You decide not to give up on yourself,